So, as you may or may not know, I have the great pleasure of being rejoined by the current and reigning mock draft Palooza champion, Brock Viera of Midnight Sports, where he is a blogger slash writer slash creator and an all-around amazing human being. And so I thought we were having technical difficulties. We were having biblical difficulties, but we fixed them finally. And we're going to spend some time talking about football that many people don't watch because they go to sleep at 10 o'clock or whatever on the East Coast. But there's a lot of really good football players. And a couple of my favorite football players in the upcoming draft class are guys that play in the Mountain West. Everyone's talking about USC and a bunch of things going on in West Coast. So, Brock, first of all, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Finally, we're here after so many technical difficulties, but
well, that was all me.
I appreciate the show. Don't even worry about it. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun since we first met, and definitely the Mockapalooza was a journey to say the least, but a fun one indeed.
Yeah. It was a long journey, Brock, and you made it to the end. So congratulations for that. We were sort of talking off air, and I was mentioning that the number, I think it's number 1 or number 2 in terms of per capita production of NFL talent is a town called, or village, I guess you could almost say, called Pago Pago in American Samoa. Tonga cranks out talent in nobody's business. Hawaii has put a lot of guys into college football in the league. And even the ones who live stateside, Oceanside, California, or wherever they may live, obviously can draw their roots back to places like Samoa and Tonga and Hawaii and other places in sort of the greater Polynesian archipelago and beyond. One, I'm amazed at how many great football players and how many of them are related to each other, like their cousins or whatever. And the other thing is just how consistently they produce great talent. So we'll talk a little bit about sort of the culture that goes into producing all these football players. But I just want to start at the beginning. We've gone through recently, right, as we talked about 2022. And I'm starting my work on 2023, early preliminary work. Do you have any favorite players or favorite placements or favorite landing spots for players in the last draft? And then are there players that you are particularly fond of going into the next draft that you'd like to sort of kick off with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned this in one of the episodes that we did on my channel about the post-draft, but the Eagles had a phenomenal draft. And the two Georgia boys that landed there, I think were great fits. Obviously, Jordan Davis in the first round. I believe Nakobe Dean. They dropped to the third. Was that, or was it late?
Yeah, Dean third, correct.
Yeah, so that one was the big shocker, of course. But Dean is only 21 years old, so he's more of a developmental project. Great value for a third-round pick. That's absolutely ridiculous value, of course. And, of course, you have a guy like Jordan Davis who's going to be able to learn a little bit under Fletcher Cox and Bradley Graham, and quite frankly, he's going to be in a division that will be running the football a fair amount. Carson Wentz is too – what's the right term? He's too shaky. When he's good, but when he's bad, it's get him off the field bad. You know what I mean? So Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick are getting a lot of carries. Zeke Elliott is still getting a fair amount of carries. Tony Pollard, we'll see what happens there. Of course, I believe we're going to go back to a running offense during Brian Dable's first couple of years in New York because of just how the quarterback room is shaping out. So he's going to get a lot of chances to really step up and be a great run defender for the Eagles. So those two guys, I love the fit there. I've been very vocal about it because my favorite team, the Chargers, Zion Johnson, he's coming into a great situation with that O-line, Corey Linsley, Rashawn Slater next to him. Cannot get any better than that. But for me, the number one fit out of everything is what the Baltimore Ravens did, both getting Tyler Linderbaum and also Kyle Hamilton. Hamilton joins an already stacked DB room. He doesn't have to be the guy day one, which a lot of the reason why his draft stock fell was because people didn't know who he was going to be, especially after a really poor performance at his pro day at Combine, so on and so forth. He gets to come into a system. He can be that hybrid linebacker. He can play a little bit of safety. But he doesn't have to take on a bunch of responsibility right away. And, of course, Tyler Linderbaum ran a lot. Was the best run offensive lineman in the country. And now he's going to a system that runs the ball a lot. So those two guys, I think, were placed in a perfect situation.
Yeah, I would agree. Both those teams got fantastic value and players that are going to contribute, and contribute pretty much immediately, which is what you want. You want players that contribute and contribute right away. So yeah, I'm in full agreement on those players and what I think they can do, where they landed.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned 2023 right now. You want to just talk about some of the places I think players can go, or things? All right.
Yeah,
So
players that you think uh, maybe are undervalued, favorites that you have. And yes, if you are far enough ahead to start thinking about landing spots, I haven't gotten to that part yet. But if you're already there, I'd love to hear if you already have picked out favorite landing spots for some of your favorite players coming up in the upcoming draft.
So I don't really have a great landing spot yet, especially in the draft. You never know what's going to happen, and over the course of a year, guys can step up, guys can fall off. That changes your perspective on a bunch of things. A guy I really like is I forget if I'm mispronouncing his first name, but Deuce Vaughn out of Kansas State, the small running back. If he goes to a run system like San Francisco, he's gonna explode on the scene. I thought they made a great signing or great draft pick this year in Davis Price from LSU. I think he would be a great addition to that room. But I've been looking up all the quarterbacks, and quite frankly, the sleeper for me at the moment is Jake Haener out of Fresno State. He's getting Jeff Tedford back as head coach. Has played very well since transferring from Washington. They beat UCLA last year. They should have beat Oregon as well. They had a really bad loss to Hawaii, but that game needs to be dissected itself for how out of the blue it was performance wise. He has a lot of the same Fresno State characteristics you'll see in a Derek Carr, David Carr, anything like that. And if he can land in the perfect situation, I think he will fall out of the first round. I think he can do a lot of great things for a team if they're able to surround him with weapons. And if he does fall the first round, they can pay him second round money. Therefore, they can surround his rookie years with much more talent than anything else. And of course, my favorite player in all of college football right now, Bijan Robinson, running back out of Texas. I don't know where he will land, but to me, he's the most explosive running back in the country right now, maybe besides Allen up in Wisconsin. We'll see what happens with him. And the sleeper pick would be another Wisconsin guy, I think Chaz Malusi, running back. He's not going to get a lot of carries because Allen has just kind of come up in his place because he was out with injury. And that's a guy could fall, but he's going to be great value for some team in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't looked at any spots either, but there are certainly places where I think a guy like Bijan makes sense. Any team that obviously wants to pound the rock makes sense. I don't think the Ravens are quite ready to give up on
JK?
Dobbins, but I could see the two of them making a really nice, thunder and lightning kind of duo if you went there. The Seahawks are another place that just pops to your head because they love pounding the rock, and they have running backs, a lot of running backs, in fact, but none of them are Bijan Robinson. And I guess last but not least, even a team like say Dallas, they're getting close to being able to move on, and obviously they want to give more chances to Pollard, but I don't know if Pollard's a guy that can take 24, 25, 26, 27 carries week after week after week after week after week. I could see him being in a sort of a good timeshare situation with a guy like Bijan now. And then the last one, I mean, obviously Derrick Henry has another couple of years left in him, but his running style doesn't say I'm going to be good until I'm 35. His running style says I'll be good for another couple of years. And I could see them, another team that really values running the football, investing, and then that way they can start making that transition, that plan of having that guy that's going to be the next guy, sort of waiting in the wings, so the succession plan approach. Those are places that at least would make sense to me for Bijan. I like Bijan a lot, but right now my RB1 is Sean Tucker at Syracuse, and I think that he can do a lot of the things that Bijan can, but I think it'll be interesting to see how they test, right? I think he's probably a little more elusive, and he might have slightly better top end speed, but they both accelerate really well for guys their size. They're both good size backs. Bijan's really big, and Tucker's decent size as well. It's going to be a really deep group of quarterbacks, and we'll dig deep into them on another show, I guess. We could spend all the time on QBs. But I like a lot of the QBs. And you mentioned, because of the transfer portal, we'll spend a little time on the next, on the movement in the Pac-12, Mountain West, et cetera, in terms of guys who are coming and going, and a lot of guys coming, a lot of guys going. We're going to see some quarterbacks have breakout years because they're now in a better situation. Some guys are going to go in the other direction. Just because you think it, the old thing about grass being greener, sometimes you think it's a better situation doesn't mean it actually is a better situation. But I think both Keaton Slovis at Pitt, even though he doesn't get a chance to Jordan Addison, which would have been great for him, but they have a lot of other talented targets, and it's a really interesting and I think QB-friendly offense. And I like Max Johnson's landing spot at Texas A&M. I think he has a chance to reestablish himself as a top 50 type player. But let's talk transfer portal because, good Lord, is there a lot of transfer portal activity. So I started talking about the 5-star guys who were coming and going at the very top of it. 2 quarterbacks, Bo Nix and Caleb Williams. Obviously, Nix going from Auburn to Oregon, Williams going from Oklahoma, following his coach to USC, and the other really big name guys, Brew McCoy leaving USC and heading to Tennessee. We can talk about those guys, and then if there's other big time transfer in and out, or either one that you want to discuss, let me know. But tell me about some of the guys those guys, if you want to talk about them, and then any others that come to your mind that are important to you.
Yeah, so first I want to start off with what a wild ride it's been with the new transfer portal. Obviously, I grew up in the era where unless you graduated, you have to wait a year before you could play. Now you can play automatically. And I like the transfer portal. I don't like the way it's being used at the moment, but at the same time, it's kind of like having a job. You should be able to put your 2 weeks in whenever you want and go get another job. That's how I feel about the transfer portal, especially in the coaching carousel that is the NCAA. Whereas the coach you play for today probably will be the coach you play for tomorrow. So I'm a big fan of it. With that being said, my goodness, is it a lot to keep track of. I remember I posted a tweet that said Washington Huskies, they should go after Casey Thompson. He'd be a great fit for the system up there. Then someone informed me, oh, by the way, Washington 2 days before had signed Michael Penix Jr. from Indiana. Yeah. So that's just kind of a small story of how massive the transfers have been. Talk about the guys you mentioned. Brew McCoy, I think he had a really rough start to his collegiate career. Goes to USC, transfers to Texas, then back to USC, I believe. Really never found his footing. USC has been in a state of disrepair since, quite frankly, Pete Carroll left. Yes, they did have the 1 year they won the Pac-12 and the 1 year they won the Rose Bowl, but besides that, it's really been a mess for a program that was great for so long, and there's so many different Hall of Fame coaches. He goes to a place in Tennessee that just sent a 26-year-old to the NFL in the 3rd round, and Velus Jones Jr., another guy from USC, I believe. He's going to a pass-happy offense, a quarterback that has a massive arm and Hendon Hooker. And quite frankly, just getting out of California, going to a place that really plays to his strengths, I think he's going to do absolute wonders there. A guy that I don't see doing well that was in the portal is Bo Nix. Now, I'm not too sure what you heard, Bill. Of course, you can put more info into it, but there's not even confirmation that he'll be the starter against Georgia. Which is a real big fall from grace from a guy that was best player in Alabama, Alabama High School Football Player of the Year, I believe. Correct. Freshman year beats Alabama in Auburn, on top of the world. Brian Harsin comes in. But frankly, the Harsin experiment's been a disaster both on and off the field. And now he's going to a place like Oregon. He's supposed to get a fresh shot with Dan Lanning, but who knows if he'll even play. And quite frankly, Oregon is Nike U, as we all know. Therefore, the NIL money runs deep. If Bo Nix doesn't hit the ground running, they'll just bring another guy in next year. So it's not looking good for him at the moment. Go down south, it's looking real good for Caleb Williams. Obviously, they brought in the number 1 receiver in the country from Pitt, Mario Addison, I believe. Not Mario Addison, but
when Jordan Addison came over.
Jordan Addison. And Mario Williams, I believe, the transfer from Oklahoma as well, right?
Correct. Mario Williams.
Yeah. All the names, they just go fly.
Trust me, I get it.
Yeah. So he put himself in a very good situation because, quite frankly, Lincoln Riley's tenure for Oklahoma has one big downfall, and that's defense. Nothing that Caleb Williams has to deal with. Caleb Williams has put himself in position to be a top 10, possibly top 5 draft pick when 2024 comes around. He's going to be playing a much easier place. Quite frankly, he's on top of the world at the moment. Playing at the Coliseum, great weapons around him, an O-line that has a fair amount of experience. Not deep, but 4 out of the 5 guys I believe have double-digit starts. So 2 guys that transferred, really great transfers, and then there's Bo Nix where I just don't know where he goes from here.
Yeah, well, the story of Bo Nix is really a story of great expectations and then the frustration of those great expectations. And I heard people talk about him as this, legend, even just coming out of high school, and how he's going to rewrite the record books at Auburn and, break a bunch of Cam Newton's records and whoever else has still had records in the books at Auburn. And he did get off to a really good start. Some inconsistency, but you could see the possibility of greatness early on. And he never became consistent, right? You could see some real, even within one game, you'd see a lot of terrific, bad, terrific, bad, terrific, bad. So we'll usually see if he can straighten out, the curve a little bit and maybe, go on a nice gentle upward slope. But I'm with you on that. He's not guaranteed anything at Oregon. They have a lot of really good quarterbacks, and people want to play there, right? I mean, they've had a lot of good quarterbacks in their history, and they're going to have more of them. He won't be the last, right? He is not the first. He won't be the last. So I 100% agree with what you just said there. Any other impact transfers you'd like to hit before we move on to talking about some of your other favorite players in the conference who are, rising and draft eligible?
Yeah, I mean, if we want to just go on who transferred where and how many impacts it had, we'll be all here all day because of just the volume.
Yeah, impact transfers, guys that you think will see the field early and often and show up.
So I want to talk about all the guys in the Pac-12 because the Pac-12, quite frankly, is in this new era of change. But real quick, there's one big transfer I want to highlight that's not in the Pac-12, and that is Casey Thompson, who goes from Texas to Nebraska. As we all know, Nebraska was the greatest 3-9 team in the history of the NCAA, only hurt by their special teams play, kind of like the Green Bay Packers in a sense. Casey Thompson, he's not going to go to the NFL and be a great star. It's kind of obvious at this point. However, he does do a lot of things well, and I think he was hampered by Steve Sarkisian's second half play calling. He's going to a system where he's going to be very friendly with Scott Frost. He uses his feet, he uses his arm. He's going to be in a conference that defensively is stout on the line, but they can be exposed deep at times. If a team like Maryland can go 6-6 with Talia Tagovailoa and, quite frankly, not a lot of talent around him, I think that Nebraska is a team that could go and win 7, 8, possibly 9 games a season under Casey Thompson, as long as Scott Frost and his staff can finally put it together. Going to the Pac-12, as we've been saying, transfers galore. Cam Ward goes to Washington State, Michael Penix Jr. Washington, Nix is at Oregon, Williams at USC, Emory Jones from Florida is now at ASU, Jane DeLora went from Washington State to Arizona. The biggest name out of all those is going to be Cam Ward, in my opinion, coming from Incarnate Wood. A lot of hype. He's joining a very pass-friendly system. They're not in the run and shoot anymore because Nick Rolovich was fired. They're more of a spread passing offense under Jake Dickard. I think that's going to play to his strengths. Of course, he has the mobility as well. They do have some guys to replace. Obviously, the big one was losing Abraham Lucas in the draft. They also got to replace Calvin Jackson Jr., I believe, the transfer from Independence Community College.
Max Borghi, finally.
Yeah, thank you, Max Borghi as well. His college career was definitely hampered by the run and shoot, but he was a great runner as well for the Cougars. However, I think that the physical tools that Cam Ward has, the way that Pac-12 defenses are at the moment, he's going to be second to Caleb Williams in terms of impact transfers.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, there's a lot of good players, and we roll through a bunch of them. I'll mention one or two and then we can dig in a little deeper to some of our particular favorites. So obviously, people talk a lot about what USC gained, but they also lost some pretty good players. Some of those guys are, I mean, they gaining Caleb and Mario Williams, Jordan Addison, and Travis Dye is a good day at the office. So that's certainly all very, very helpful things. But they also lost some I think, some important depth pieces. Now Elijah Winston, I guess theoretically could return because he hasn't signed anywhere yet. Mananoa, Tifono, Ishmael Shropshire. Who's the other one? Well, we talked about Brew McCoy already. So those are all guys I think. And Raymond Scott, right? Another linebacker. I think that's going to hurt them a little bit. Hunter Echols ended up at Arizona. They lost a lot of linebackers. I know people don't care about linebackers as much as they used to. And of course, we all talked a little about Arizona State. I mean, Cam Johnson, Emory Jones, Nesta Jade Silvera, Omar Norman Lott, right? So that's a lot of guys. Paul Tyson, right? Another big time signing in his past with Alabama finds his way to Arizona State. So Arizona State might be reloading. They might be pretty darn good if all those guys turn out to do what they're supposed to be. They lost Jordan Scott. I say lost. I mean, he's in the portal. I don't think he's landed anywhere yet, but I guess I should check to be sure. And Chip Trainum ended up at Ohio State. Like Ohio State needs more talent. Those are all players like Jackson Dart, Ole Miss. Michael Trigg also went with him to Ole Miss, so they can continue to play together. I think Chase Cota is going to flourish at Oregon, or once again, depending on what happens to the quarterback situation, but their quarterback play is better. Marquise Irving ends up at Oregon from Minnesota. They picked up Caleb Chapman from Texas A&M, Christian Gonzalez from Colorado, and Sam Tuimami. How is that pronounced? Taimani, is that how it's pronounced? Taimani. I guess it's Sam Taimani is probably how it's pronounced. You would know better than I would. I think it's Taimani from finds me from Washington, Oregon. So Oregon picked up some potential impact players as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned ASU. I want to touch on them real quick because they did pick up a tremendous amount of talent, but obviously, I'm a University of Hawaii football fan. One of the recent controversies was Todd Brown. Todd Brown came from Arizona State, and Arizona State gave him like $14 million in his buyout. Or so it was a ridiculous number. It was something like really, really big. And there's some justification now during how his time in Hawaii ended. But at the same time, can you truly say Arizona State is in a better place with Herb Edwards than they were with Todd Brown? Yeah, the end part of Brown's tenure there wasn't the greatest, but this is a dude that also won multiple double-digit win seasons. A guy that made the Pac-12 championship game. Quite frankly, ASU has not reached those heights under Herb Edwards. They just had to fire their offense coordinator. The new guy they brought in from UNLV, I'm not hearing a lot of great things about him personally. And this is a dude that was the OC at Baylor under Matt Rule. Matt Rule didn't take over Carolina. I think that should be kind of red flag number one. Obviously Emory Jones is a great talent, just hasn't had the foundation around him. Is this a place where it's going to happen? I don't know, quite frankly. And if I have 5 coaches in the Pac-12 on the hot seat right now. Herm Edwards is one of them. If they can't get 8 to 9 wins again, like they did last season, but they got to win a bowl game, I just don't see how ASU continues the Herm Edwards experience. They're at this weird stage where can they truly get better from where they're at? Only time will tell, but I frankly, I don't know, and I don't see it.
Okay. One last transfer portal quarterback question, and then we'll move on. So Jaden Daniels went in sort of a crowded house at LSU. What do you think happens with him? Because when he was, especially early on, we talk about Bo Nix sort of making a big splash early on and then never quite getting back to that point. I was a huge Jaden Daniels fan early in his career, and then I kind of cooled on him the more I saw, and it seemed like he didn't really develop. What do you think happens with him at LSU, and what do you think of him?
So that's a good question because I feel the exact same way you did. I was very high on him early on, especially when he beat Justin Herbert and the Oregon Ducks, essentially kicking them out of the college football playoffs, for lack of a better term. Knowing Brian Kelly, probably the wrong thing was going to happen with him. you know, it is what it is. Honestly, probably put him as a wildcat formations, things like that. That's the only way I see it working out. Quite frankly, no disrespect to the man, but until I see something change, he doesn't have the arm talent to make it in the SEC at the moment. And I don't really know what weapons he has at LSU right now they can throw to. The offensive system is kind of up in the air at this point for Brian
I
Kelly.
mean, a lot of people's why did you want? So they got players, they have tight ends. I mean, it's LSU. They always have a bunch of talent.
Of course. Right, but of course, but at the same time, it's Brian Kelly. He's not going to have Tommy Reese as offensive coordinator for the first time in a while, and what we've always seen from Notre Dame is that they cannot compete against SEC teams. Now, of course, our good friend, especially your good friend, Cowboy Greg, he's a big Notre Dame fan, so he can speak more on that. And his always thing is that because of the great academic requirements at the institution that is Notre Dame, they can't ever get good quarterbacks or cornerbacks or whatever. But at the end of the day, when it comes to Notre Dame playing the SEC teams, it's not like they just couldn't get over the hump. It hasn't been close, right? The greatest team that they had got blown out in the national championship.
Yes.
Next time it plays Alabama in the college football playoffs. It's not necessarily a close game. Yes, Clemson in the ACC, but I consider them in that southern sphere because they're in the Carolinas. Clemson smokes them in the college football playoffs. To my memory, there's not a team that he beat at Notre Dame that's in the SEC or in the southern sphere in general. I just don't know how it's going to work out at LSU where the pressure is cranked all the way up. He does have some stability because of his contract, but at the end of the day, that doesn't equate wins, So I don't see how it works out for Jaden Daniels. He can't use his legs as much because SEC defenses are just that much better. And just doesn't have the arm talent, in my opinion, to truly evolve into being that elite level quarterback.
Yeah, I was hoping he could transfer, frankly, to a Mountain West school. I would have loved him at San Jose State or someplace like that where they have a good track record of the coaching staff there of developing quarterbacks. The system is still one that would grow him in both the mental and physical parts of the game. And frankly, he'd have a better chance of winning the job. But we'll see. And I hope he does at least get a chance to play and show what he can do. And if he does play well, then get a chance to, show that he can be the prospect at one point I thought he could develop into. Just never quite worked out.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to jump off that. I agree with you 100%. I thought he was going to transfer to either a Mountain West school or maybe a mid-level Big Ten school like Illinois or something like that. But there's two big schools in the Mountain West I thought we were going to go after, which is San Diego State, because realistically they were just a passing attack away from being undefeated and a New sixth berth, and also Colorado State. They just poured a bunch of money into Jay Norvell and Matt Mummy in that air raid system that made Carson Strong so good and have made Romeo Dobbs a third-round pick, Cole Turner, I believe, a sixth-round pick. If he goes there, I think that they can do a lot of really – I'm not saying that they're not going to because they're in a really good position, but he's the type of talent that could take them into the Mountain West Championship game. Week one, in my opinion.
No, I like good call. On that. Those are places that make sense as well. And, like I said, I still wish him the best. He was a very interesting player to watch. And I thought he could develop into sort of a similar developmental arc as Dorian Thompson-Robinson, right, where he eventually becomes a guy who can show that he can win from inside the pocket and things like that. Okay. So let's dig a little deeper into some of our favorite players out west. And I'll start with some of my favorites. And we've talked about some of them, but I want to talk about some of them some more, or at least in more detail. So we talked a little about some of the players that are going to or have a chance to be really, 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 really good. And some of them are very young. I mean, Utah has some players that I think have a chance to be special for a long time. Junior Tafona is just a baby, basically. But one of the most impressive defensive tackles I saw on tape all year, and he's, like I said, was he 19 years old? 4.5 sacks from the interior as a freshman. Was the defensive lineman of the week in the Pac-12 after the Oregon game. Had 9 tackles in a game, which is the most by most by a Utah defensive lineman, not tackle, lineman since 2018. Christian Gonzalez, Cole Bishop, Jeffrey Bassa, the safety, Lou Mangia Hearns III, Kalen Bullock, right? Speaking, going back to USC, those are all freshmen, and some of them will take a big step forward, some of them will level off. Right? We just talked about what we just saw in a couple of guys who had great starts to their careers and then didn't quite continue on that upward arc. But I like all those guys. Zach Charbonnet is back. I think he has a chance to continue to be really, really good. Calvin Jackson. No, wait, Calvin Jackson's gone. Not him. Who am I thinking of? Brett Keithy didn't declare, right? He stayed. Yeah, he stayed. Brett Keithy stayed in school. So yeah, I'm just trying to keep track. So that's a guy I think to have a big year. I'm sort of penciling him in to be, a guy who's going to maybe break some records at his school. I like Alex Forsyth, offensive lineman from Oregon. Jackson Kirkland, declared than undeclared. So I think he has a chance to build on some of what he did. I think Nathan Eskridge came back also. He's one of my favorite offensive linemen who didn't declare. And Nick Ford from Utah is another offensive lineman I like in the conference.
Yeah, and Utah, as far as I know, just going off last year, has a fairly impressive running back room.
Yes.
I was very surprised, especially since I believe they lost 2 running backs. Their lives unfortunately got taken from them in really tragic circumstances, and they were still able to maintain a fairly effective running back room, which was a big surprise. I want to shout out Kyle Whittingham real quick. This is a guy that was obviously an Urban Meyer assistant, and then as a co-head coach at the time, they won the Fiesta Bowl against Pitt together. This dude also went and won the Sugar Bowl with Utah against, I believe, Alabama, and that was when Utah was still in the Mountain West. Very impressive Rose Bowl. Obviously, just a combination of C.J. Stroud and Jackson Smith and Jimba just unfortunately won the day for Ohio State. But had he won that, he would have had 3 out of the original 4 BCS bowl game wins. Only one missing would be the Orange Bowl. Crazy enough, a guy that was just a head coach in a Mountain West team that was supposed to take a fall off after Urban Meyer left. So his ability to replace talent has been just a very underrated trait of a very impressive career. Cam Rising, to me, the quarterback, is going to be the key to everything. If he doesn't necessarily have to play out of his mind, but if he can step into that kind of like Stetson Bennett role, the game manager, throw it away when there's nobody there, make smart decisions, limit turnovers, make the right calls of the line. If he can be that dude, Utah is a very scary team to watch out for. Obviously, Pac-12 defending champions. They can put the right wins together. They don't necessarily have to go undefeated in the conference now. They can win 10, 11 games and a championship. They could find themselves in a really good spot come January, possibly even pushing for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I think USC is going to take another year to sort of coalesce, congeal, and play well together. So, yes, I think Utah has a window that's open for another year, maybe 2 at the most, before USC does go back to being sort of an unstoppable killing machine in the South. The guy I'd be sort of force-feeding Cam Rising is I make him watch a lot of Andy Dalton at TCU and a bunch of, well, this guy's still in college, but a bunch of Grayson McCall at Coastal Carolina to say, this is what I want from you, right? Pick up, you don't have to be, baby Vic, but I need you to pick up yards sometimes with your feet, especially in certain situations. As you said, avoid interceptions, get the ball out of your hands, get it to your playmakers when it isn't there, hit an assistant coach on the sidelines. All right. And like I said, manage. People use the term game manager as if it's a negative. If you don't need somebody to be Superman, and they don't, there's nothing wrong with managing the game. I mean, and there's been times when Tom Brady was a game manager. Look at his early career in, those first couple of Super Bowls, his early career with the Patriots. He made some key plays at key times. He's mostly a game manager. Nothing wrong with that. I agree with you. Utah is a dangerous team. And, they do it mostly with 3, 4, and 2 stars. They get the occasional 4. They almost never get 5 stars, but they don't really need them, I guess, because they managed to get it done without them. I'm with you on all of what we just said. A few other players in the conference that I think have a chance to be really, really good. Avery Roberts, linebacker from Oregon State, is a guy that I think has a chance to be really good. Noah Sewell, of course, yet another Sewell. I think he's just a sophomore next year, but I like him. A couple of defensive linemen, Brandon Dorless, Oregon, and Ron Stone Jr. from Washington State. I talked a little bit about Tuli. I think I did. I can't remember if I did or didn't. But if I didn't, Tuli Tolopolutu. Is that it? I think it's Tolopolutu from USC. I believe I'll work on that. By the time the draft gets here, I promise I'll be nailing that. And one of my favorite corners to watch last year. Well, they have 2 of my favorite corners to watch last year, right? Clark Phillips and Q Blue Kelly are 2 really good corners. And I think both those guys have a chance to be really good professionals as well. Any other players you want to hit on before you jump to the Mountain West?
No, I think we covered everything. I just want to mention a couple things real quick. What's happening with Corvallis is actually something I really want to keep an eye out on. Obviously, when you talk about New Year's Six success, right? They haven't had anything like that since obviously the days of Dennis Erickson and Chad Johnson. Was TJ Houston John on that?
Yeah, they were both. They were teammates, in fact. Even before, I think they were teammates even before at junior college, right?
Yeah.
So Chad Johnson, when he was at Santa Monica Junior College, was probably on the most talented junior college group of receivers in the history of the planet, because one of his teammates was Steve Smith, Sr. One of his teammates, well, he was there. But TJ was a junior college guy too, but maybe he wasn't Santa Monica. But the funny thing is, none of the guys that mentioned were considered the best receiver on the team. The best receiver was a guy that didn't even play didn't play 4-year college football. He got married or something and ended up working at the post office or something like that. But all the guys just named were seen as like the number 2, 3, and 4 receivers on the team. And of all people, this guy, I can't remember his name, the other guy, didn't even play college and obviously didn't play professional. Didn't play 4-year college, but didn't play professional. He after his sophomore year at Santa Monica Junior College, he left with his associate's degree, got a job, got married, settled down. But yeah, that was a pretty deep group of receivers they had at Santa Monica Junior College at the time, between Steve Smith Sr. and TJ. Was TJ there? TJ might have been there too. I have to go back and check. But I know it was Chad Johnson, Steve Smith Sr., and this other guy who didn't even play college football. But yeah, they had a terrific run together at Oregon State, and
I believe they beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl.
They had a running back that what's his name's brother? Jaquiz.
Oh, Jaquiz Rogers.
Yeah, I mean, I think he came in like a couple years after them. I think they'd spent at least 1 year together, I believe, maybe 2.
Yeah, because I think they beat USC that year in Corvallis. I think that's when USC was ranked like number 1 or something like that. I can't remember. It was the Mark Sanchez year. That's the part I remember. It was the 1 year as a starter. USC went to Corvallis and just got steamrolled by the Beavers. But Corvallis is becoming like a kind of a stronghold, a really hard place to win, honestly.
No, it was not his brother. What was his brother's name? He had a similar name too. It was Jaquiz's older brother that they crossed over with. What was Jaquiz? He was also like a short. They were very similar backs. They were both like 5'7", 5'6", very quick little dude. What was the brother's name? It was his older brother. I can't remember his name. This is gonna bother me now. But yes, it was a talented bunch. They were a super fun offense to watch. Was the point I was making. And yes, I think Smith is the right guy for the job. First of all, and they've gotten some. They've upgraded the talent. I think they've even landed a 4-star or two, which is big news for Corvallis. It's been a while since they've had a couple of 4-stars come in. So they've upgraded the talent a little bit, and once again they've done fairly well in terms of attracting talent in the transfer portal. Which is a must, frankly, if you're going to be Oregon State. You got to do your level best to start landing people in the transfer portal. And Washington State worked the portal well as well. Utah did well. USC killed it in the transfer portal. UCLA did a good job. Shout out to UC Davis getting a former 3-star, Evan Tattersall from Cal, right? That was a big moment for them. Also, Texas A&M Commerce managed to land Keith Miller from Colorado. So you don't necessarily have to go as I mentioned, to a big school. San Jose State got 2 3-stars and 2 4-stars in the transfer portal. No, I take it back. It's 2 from 2. Sorry. San Jose State got 2 and San Diego State got 2. Chase Williams and James McNorton. Chase Williams from USC, McNorton from Washington State ended up at San Jose State. Mark Redmond from Washington and Keenan Kristen from USC ended up at San Diego State. So, yeah, sorry about that. But back to Oregon State. This is a big year for them. Potentially a big year for them, I guess. And if they are able to, lock down a couple more, they don't have to be big-time recruits, just good players, they have a real chance, frankly, next year. Oh, one that big-time Arizona grad, not grad. Yeah, he's a grad. I think he's a grad transfer. Jacob Cowing from UTEP. Watch out. He's only a 2-star recruit coming out of high school, but I think he's going to just blow up. I think he's going to be absolutely terrific, and he's going to a place where I think he's going to become, wide receiver 1. Okay, so that's that. Oh, okay. I semi-lied. One last one I want to shout out. Laviska Chenault's younger brother, Levante Chenault, goes from Colorado to Alabama State. So for my HBCU friends out there, that's a big-time get for them, coming to them as a wide receiver as well. Okay. But now to the Mountain West for real. There's a lot of really good players in the Mountain West, and I think they get overlooked a little bit. Brady Hope has been doing a great job at San Diego State, and they just bring in so many good players. They had, I think, the best defensive players last year. Cameron Thomas, I was a huge fan of at San Diego State. They had good wide receivers. I liked a lot of their Greg Bell. I loved their secondary is one of the best, maybe the most well-coached secondary, on the whole West Coast. I mean, Washington, okay, right there with Washington, I think amongst the best coach secondaries on the West Coast. Cameron Friel had a terrific, freshman season at UNLV and has a chance to build on it.
Well, actually, I want to touch on that real quick.
Yeah.
From what I'm hearing out of Las Vegas, it looks like former Tennessee quarterback Harrison Bailey will actually be the starter coming in. I like Friel a lot. I saw some very impressive things from his true freshman year. But as far as I know, it looks like it's the Bailey show from here on out.
So that means Friel's going to hit the portal?
Harrison Butler, Harrison Bailey. No, I think Friel's still on the team.
Right, he's still on the team. Do you think he hits the portal?
Yeah, but what's it called? Harrison is essentially the incumbent starter, as far as I know. They have a really interesting quarterback room because also Doug Brumfield, who's a quarterback over there, hit the portal for like a week and then came back to UNLV. So the quarterback room is going to be real interesting. But as far as I know, from what I have been reading up on them, that's the way it's working out so far for Marcus Arroyo and his staff.
Huh. That's interesting. And I like Field a lot, and it feels sort of strange to. Well, I mean, obviously, I guess they're going to battle it out. That'll be a very competitive for a team that hasn't really been good in a very long time. It's a very interesting program, and they have more good players than I think people realize at UNLV. And you and I were both big Chuck Wagon fans. Charles Williams III was a guy that I enjoyed a lot, and I think that they're going to have to shift the way their offense works because they no longer have a guy that's going to just get that number of touches. I don't think any one player on the team next year gets anywhere close to the. This guy dominated. He was if you're a big market share percentage guy, and I am, he's one of the guys with tops in the nation at any level of football, frankly, in terms of just how many touches he got through both you add running and passing game together. So I'll be interested to see what they look like. I think Boise is sort of back next year, whatever term we use. I think they're going to be really good. I think Bachmeier puts it together this season. They always have good offensive and defensive line play because they always have good offensive and defensive line play.
Yeah.
They've had a lot of injury issues. Last season and even the season before that, they had a lot of trouble keeping people healthy. I wonder if they'll be able to do something about that. Injuries are to some extent random, but there are things you can maybe do in terms of preparation and practice that might reduce it slightly. How do you feel about North? You're seeing your favorite prospects out there.
So I just want to mention a couple things before I jump into that. When it comes to UNLV, I'm a UNLV graduate. I had the opportunity to tour the football facility multiple times, and let me tell you, the Fertitta Football Complex is one of the nicest football facilities you will see in the country. They also play at Allegiant Stadium.
Yeah, you can see that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So UNLV is definitely a program to keep an eye out on, depending whatever happens with Marcus Rowe this year, if they continue on with him or if they go in a different direction, because outside donors have already committed a lot of money to the football program. They play at an NFL stadium. If the NIL money starts coming in, that's a team that we could see jump to the Pac-12 if things work out correctly. I completely agree with you at Boise State. I believe they have a wide receiver by name was Keelan Doss or something like that. Right? He's a speedster. He is fast. If Hank Bachmeier can finally put together, which is a big if, because he's like a Carson Wentz. When he's on, he's on. But when he's off, it's getting feeling off.
He's smaller, a lot like Wentz in a lot of ways, including the getting hurt and looking great and then looking not great. Yeah, that's actually pretty accurate. Nice work there, sir. Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. But to his credit, because I am a big Boise fan. I love what they've done over the years after Peterson, Harsin, and now at Avalos. He is not afraid to stand in the pocket and deliver the football. So not at route. He will just get taken out. Doesn't matter. Great warrior. So if you look at Boise State's schedule in the 2022 season, if they can go 11-1 undefeated, they will make a New Year's Six game. Just the way it's set up. I believe they have a non-conference game against BYU. A couple other non-conference games that really shape up nicely. So if they also play Utah State. So if Utah State does upset Alabama week 1, which we all know they won't, but if they do, that would just be an even better opportunity for the Broncos to raise their rankings as well. Avalos had a really tough first year, but he also didn't do himself any favor, calling the timeout at the end of the first half against UCF, and then UCF goes and scores a touchdown. They end up winning the game. Really poor management against an Oklahoma State team that they should have beat up in Boise, an Oklahoma State team that went on to compete for the Big 12 championship, and then obviously beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl. There's a lot of good things going for that program right now. They do have to replace Khalil Shakir, who we both know, and you know because I've spoken about him multiple times. I am very, very high on him. How he fell to the Bills is incredible. How he fell to the Bills in the 5th round is honestly, it's almost criminal to think about in terms of the talent that guy has.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yeah, guess what? Diggs went in, right? Right? Look at the symmetry. The symmetry. They apparently have a type 5th round receivers that had no business going in the 5th round.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? But so Boise State's another team to watch. Obviously, Utah State, they're the defending champions for the conference. They're a team to watch out. We already mentioned San Diego State. Fresno State, we mentioned a couple times. They're kind of my dark horse to win the Pac-12 at the moment because of obviously Jake Hayner, but they do have to replace a couple guys. I believe Ronnie Rivers left the program to go to the NFL. guys like that. So another team to watch out for. Nevada has, as far as I know, has taken a big step back. There's not a lot of faith in that coaching staff right now, as far as I've heard. UNLV is a big wild card at the moment. Hawaii is a big wild card because they play Vandy week 1. We don't know how that's going to go with Timmy Chang. However, this is a conference that I think we could see a New Year's 16 come out of this year, and my pick is going to be Boise State. That's the way I see it working out.
Yeah, I think big year for Boise. I like Bachmeier a little more than I probably should, and I'm going to be watching a lot of Boise State to try to either talk myself into or out of some of these I've liked about him in the past. But yeah, what you mentioned was that whole just hanging in and getting just blasted and just puts the ball where it needs to be. And that's why also one of the reasons that Jake Haener is as high as he is in my rankings, because his ability to just hang in there and get just waffled, blasted, and he just hangs in there. I mean, like, the courage, the intestinal fortitude to just constantly. Both those guys play by offensive lines that are not the best, or at least in the past happened. We'll see what happens going forward. And, Bachmeier hasn't helped himself at times. Sometimes he will force pressure. Like, he'll create pressure by moving when he doesn't need to. That's something he does sometimes as well. But a lot of his physical components are things that are like, he just needs to grow mentally and physically. 12 pounds of muscle wouldn't hurt him either. But I like his arm. I like his guts. I'm not always in love with his decision making, and like I said, he definitely needs to be a little more careful with his body.
Not to mention that I didn't want to talk down or anything like that, but your love for Hank Bachmeier is that's really took me back. I think he's a decent quarterback, but maybe it's because I'm a sports bettor as well, and I don't have a lot of faith in Boise. There are some times that he has absolutely ruined some of the bets that I had on Boise. I do think he's going to take definitely a step up this year. So I'm with you on that. Just sometimes he keeps good.
Decision making and stay healthy. I think if he does those two things, I think he will take a big step forward this year. But as you said, that's a big if, right? Staying healthy is a big if, and being a better decision maker is both a big if. I want to hit a couple more teams. So we briefly mentioned Hawaii. You said wild card. That's an interesting term to use. Who are some of your favorite players? And obviously, people don't watch a lot of Hawaii. They should, right? Hawaii always has players that are fun. They had like Calvin Turner when he transferred down. I was like, oh, I was super excited to see what he was going to be there. I mean, they always have one or two players that I really like. Who are some players that people should pay attention to or learn about if they haven't watched a lot of Hawaii football?
So, in the fallout of the Todd Graham tenure, a lot of players transferred out of Hawaii. So the pickings are slim. However, Coach Timmy Chang and his staff have done an incredible job recruiting, and they brought in a couple guys I really like, and I think they're going to make the most of a couple guys that are there. First one is the quarterback situation. Cameron Cooper was a Todd Graham transfer. I believe the starter is going to be Braden Shager. He just started randomly after Checo Cordero went down with an injury. Quarterback. He was really harmed by the offensive system put in place for him. I think Coach Chang and the staff are going to have a better one for him. He's a pretty decent quarterback. He can put the ball in the money. And most importantly, in the big moments, he doesn't shrink. First ever college star upsets Fresno State. That just, especially for a Hawaii team that doesn't necessarily have a lot of success against ranked opponents, for him to come in and do that was a big eye-opener for me. He played decent for the rest of his time. Again, was just harmed by the offensive system he was in. I think going back to the run and shoot kind of system, well, the evolution of it is going to be really beneficial for him. I can see him throw a lot of quick screens, a lot of quick passes, RPOs, things like that. Things that's really going to benefit a quarterback like him. I think Coach Graham said that he was the best quarterback prospect he's ever recruited. So just kind of props to him. He's a guy to look out for. Running back, Dietrich Parsons. Last year, he split carries with Daniel Hunter. Hunter is now at Liberty, I believe. He's going to get a heavier workload. He's not a guy that's going to be a bunch of cuts, a bunch of broken tackles. But when he finds his seam, and he does find it often, he's gone. So that's another guy to look out for. And the last one is on the defense side of the ball, linebacker transfer out of Nebraska back to Hawaii, Wyndon Ho'ohuli, 4-star prospect, didn't play the 2020 season in high school because of the pandemic. Didn't play at Nebraska, so he's probably a little bit rusty. But when you get a prospect like that coming back to the islands and playing in the Mountain West, so that's another big player to look out for out of the University of Hawaii.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, I always try to as many Hawaii games, and I think, and once again, this is probably more emotion than common sense talking here, but I really think Timmy Chang is a great hire, partially because obviously he's a legend, but also I think he understands how to recruit that area better than. I mean, who would know better? I mean, I think he understands how to recruit people to there. I think he knows what kinds of players will thrive there. And I think obviously he knows offense. Super intelligent when he was a player. Really, was a terrific coach, when he was a quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator. And I think he's going to thrive as a head coach, particularly there. Like, that's the right spot for him. Yeah. So any other Mountain West teams that we should look out for that you think could make noise this year, or Mountain West players that we should look out for that you think could make noise this year?
I think we've covered kind of every team in the Mountain West. Boise, like I said, Boise State is my favorite for the conference this year. For the state, the dark horse, we don't know what's going to happen in Colorado State. They can go a multitude of ways in Norvell's first year. I think a team that has shown the most consistency for the longest time, a team that could probably reach 10 wins again this season, is Air Force. Trey Calhoun has done a phenomenal job over the decade. He's been there for longer than a decade, but there's tenure there, essentially. I don't ever remember Air Force being just poor. Yeah, there's some seasons that are a little bit below 500, some seasons that are a little bit above 500, some seasons they exceed expectations. But for the most part, they're a very solid team. If I remember correctly, did they beat Army in Texas last year? I think. They might lost in overtime.
This past season was the
Commander Chiefs Trophy winner.
Yeah. So yeah.
Really, because they lost to Navy, so
we already secured the trophy by that point. Though we'd already, and I should stop saying we. They. I wasn't on the team. I was nowhere close to the team. I was just in the Army a very long time ago. But the Army beat Navy. So we had beaten Navy the last couple of years, and then we lost to them this past year. But we'd already secured the Commander-in-Chief trophy because it goes based on who's won the most of the games, between the round robin, right? And Navy had already lost to Air Force. So the best they could do, was, beat us, obviously. So, which is what they did. But, that hurt a little bit. And we'd beaten Air Force. So, yeah. But the point is that it's a big time. I mean, I think it's a special rivalry, obviously. And, yeah, Air Force is good pretty much every day. Fisher DeBerry did a great job there. And then when Calhoun came in, they kind of seamlessly kept going on. You can usually pencil in for about 8 wins. You're right. Occasionally it'll drop down to 6 and maybe occasionally 5, but very rarely 5. But usually it's a 6, 7 win team, but most likely around 8. And then in a good year, they pop up to 9 or 10.
It's very hard to win in Colorado Springs as well. Higher altitude is also obviously benefits them as well.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going to go to a New Year's 6 game or anything like that. I just think they're going to be, again, another solid team. And they're just a consistent program.
So we have to talk about BYU, one, because they do a great job of bringing in players from Hawaii and Tonga and American Samoa and the West Coast. I mean, they're not a West Coast team in location, but they're almost a West Coast team in composition because of how many of the players they get are from, some from the actual state where they're located, but many of them from Oregon, Nevada, California, Washington, Arizona, even Texas occasionally. But talk to me about what you think of BYU, and then if you have some sort of final players in terms of sleepers, whatever you want to throw out there before we close out.
All right. So obviously the big thing with BYU is their conference realignment, right? They're going to the Big 12. And I like the move for them, but I'm going to give a very controversial take on the Cougars. Out of the 3 teams in Utah, so that's Utah State, BYU, in terms of the way the programs are trending, they're the one that's trending the least up. In fact, I think they're trending stagnantly. Utah has definitely shot up, obviously, the Pac-12 win. Utah State shot up with their Mountain West win and also beating Oregon State in their bowl game. BYU had a really bad bowl loss. Like, quite frankly, if we're being honest, Kalani Sitake, a guy I like a lot, has just never really been able to get it done in the clutch time. In 2019, they lose to Hawaii, primarily because of his play calling at the end of the game at the Hawaii Bowl. In 2020, they lose to Coastal Carolina. If not, they could have possibly tried for the college football playoffs, though they probably would have gotten in because Coastal Carolina went undefeated and they didn't get in. However, they did have a second overall pick in the NFL draft and still wasn't able to get it done. I do understand circumstances. COVID, the game was a last-minute schedule. They had to go down to Florida, so I get it. But the point still remains. Last year, they get absolutely creamed in their bowl game. There's no other way to put it. I'm not a big fan of the quarterback Hall. Is it Jared or Jared Hall?
Jared.
I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of him.
I'm not seeing it.
Yeah. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of him per se. I'm not a hater against him at all. I just don't know if he's a guy that can take BYU to the high levels they need to go. And quite frankly, since the great Lavelle Edwards left the program, they haven't been able to ever truly get it done. They haven't, as far as I know, they've never appeared in New Year's Six bowl game. The one chance that to go undefeated again was in 2001. They get smoked by Hawaii, a game that Hawaii people talk about so much. Nick Rolovich threw 8 touchdowns on the day. When do they finally break through the ceiling? I don't know. I don't see it happening in a conference where you have Cincinnati, where you have Houston, where you have Baylor, they're going to give Aranda his $100 million most likely, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, who can beat anybody on any given day, Matt Campbell and Iowa State. I don't see it happening when it comes to the Cougars.
Yeah, it's going to be probably a dad. Now, the theory on the BYU side is it's opens Texas up more for them. They want to get more players out of Texas. I mean, but everybody wants to get players out of Texas. Like, there's, everybody's trying to recruit Texas because of, one, it's just the sheer mass, the size of it, and there's so many good football players. But yeah, I agree with a lot of the points you made, and I haven't seen it yet with Kieran Hall. Some people love him. I'm going to watch more, and I try not to carry over my own biases whenever possible. I try to see a player new, and when I switch from, because some guys aren't the same guy from one year to the next, either positive or negative, right? But yeah, I'll be looking forward to checking out BYU as well to see how they stack up and if they are a team that has a chance to make some noise as they make a conference change. Any sleepers or players you think are wildly underrated or I guess even wildly overrated if you want to skew negative, but that you want to hit on before we close out?
Just like cross college football? Or
guys, if they got drafted, I'll open it up to guys that are either going to be in the next draft or guys that were just in the last draft. So I'll let you choose from those two groups of players.
Gotcha. So I don't know if that's my own biases, but two guys I've been very fond of for a minute are the wide receiver duo at Texas, Whittingham and Worthy. Obviously, we all know about Worthy's game-changing speed, but Whittingham's he's a very nice player. Can make a catch from a multitude of positions. Is willing to put his body on the line for a catch. So those are two guys that I think we all got to look out for. Is it Brandon Allen out of Wisconsin, the young running back?
Braylon. Yeah,
Braylon. A guy taking multiple first team carries at 17. Dude's built like a monster at 17 as well. So as it continues to grow to his body behind such a great Wisconsin offensive line, and if Graham Mertz can finally put it together, they're going to be a very interesting team to watch in the future. So other guys, I would have to say, obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. Up in Ohio State. Obviously, the big talking Stroud and Smith and Jimba and Travion Henderson. He's a guy that's probably going to be the next generation of a really good wide receiver to come out of Ohio State. Tank Bigsby out of Auburn. That is a very interesting thing. Because I was just talking about him the other day with my friend. My theory is this: either he's going to be so overrun into the ground because there's not really another offensive threat at Auburn, or the whatever issues or beef he has with Brian Harsin. I know they kind of cool the waters. If that reemerges, he's not going to get any playing time. If that happens, he could fall in the draft. He would be a great pickup for some team in the NFL. A quarterback that I like, I don't think he has NFL potential, but just I like him in the system he's in, is Will Rogers out of Mississippi State, quarterback. I don't like the air raid in the SEC, but if anyone is to run the air raid, I think Will Rogers is the right trigger man for the Bulldogs. And they have random impressive wins. They beat Texas A&M randomly last year. They do just some random things that make you go, they're on the verge of something. And then we remember it's Mike Leach coaching, and then that's not happening. The last guy I would say, I know we went through a whole list of people, but I want to get back to the West Coast. Obviously, everyone's talking about this is the year for DTR, that he's gonna explode the scene. It's gonna be interesting to see because they lost Kyle Phillips, they lost Greg Dulcich. I think the guy's gonna take the most amount of workload is Zach Charbonnet. The guy I liked, he had a really impressive start against Hawaii. Kind of fell off towards the back end of the season, in my opinion. If he can get it rolling consistently, that's that guy we could see be a high day 2 pick as well.
Yeah, I like pretty much all of them. There's a few more I want to throw out there as well, and then you can tell us if you have some final thoughts after that. So, a player that I spotted in a limited group of games that were played during the pandemic, and then he had a chance to show me a little bit more in a fuller season, and then he got hurt last season. But he's an older player. Obviously, there's always a little concern about a guy's age, but Scott Matlock is a really active, really interesting defensive tackle. And, I've mentioned what I think of Boise, what I like about Boise, and, how much I like to sort of dig into what they've got there. And I guess he's a 6th-year guy now. I got to think of where he is now in terms of his eligibility, but he's back, right? He's still there. He was one of their best players before he got hurt, and I think he'll come back to being one of their best players. So, big number 99, I guess red shirt, super senior, whatever you want to call it, is a guy that is really active. He's big, 296-ish or something, 6'3" and 5'8" or something like that. Knows how to use his hands, knows how to get it done in terms of inside, and can even kick outside in certain special situations. Was All Mountain West, second team in 2021, was All Mountain West honorable mention 2020. I think he's going to be All Mountain West. No honorable mention, no second team. I think he'll be a first team All Mountain West this year, and I think he's going to probably be a guy that from the interior might give you 5.5, 6 sacks. A lot of pressure, tackles for loss. He's going to have a big statistical season. That's my prediction for him. San Diego State always has a defensive back I like, so I don't think this year's going to be different. Going back to like Nat Barry, and going back years. I guess you would go way back. John, what's his name? We just talked about him a second ago. Coach
Herm Edwards.
Herm Edwards, right? Speaking of San Diego State, right? Herm Edwards back in the day was out there getting it done as a corner in his days at San Diego State. But so I don't think the state is being different. So there's gonna be some San Diego State guy that I'm gonna like. And when I look at the guys that I've seen out there, that they've put out there, they find a lot of guys who can play either safety or corner. and some of the guys that they've put into the league end up playing one or the other. Darren Hall is a guy that, can possibly do both. But I'm going to sort of walk through Cedarius Barfield is a guy that I think has a chance to be very, very good. And they have their Aztec back, which is a hybrid position. Patrick McMorris is another guy I think has a chance to be really good. And then last but not least, I think that someone else who has a chance to be – he's going to be draft eligible, I don't think. But I guess I'll stick with those two. The other guys are – I like them a lot. I like them all. But Cedarius Barfield is a guy that – another Texas guy, right? Stocky, powerful build, smart and quick. And then McMorris is a bigger guy, right? Probably close to 6 feet tall, probably about 208 pounds, moves well. I think he has a chance to be something. I'll be shocked if I don't develop a draft crush on another one of the San Diego State guys this year, as I do almost every year. Look out for Barfield, look out for Morris at San Diego State. I think they're both guys who play are safeties at the next level, but different kinds of safeties. Probably one of them's a strong, one of them's a free. I'm guessing once you get to the league. Do you have any final thoughts or final things you'd like to share before we close this out, sir?
Yeah, just several things. One, kind of jump back to San Diego State. What an impressive lineage of running backs the Aztecs had. Obviously, the big one is Marshall Faulk, you all know, but
I know.
Yeah, from my memory, obviously Donald Pumphrey Jr., who was an incredible running back while he was there. First round pick Rashad Penny, just to name a few, and it's really shocking for a program, obviously, when it comes to coaching, associated with the Air Coryell, Doc Coryell. It's just very interesting to see. So some of my final thoughts is, I mentioned earlier, there are several coaches that I have on the hot seat in the Pac-12. Want to go to them real quick. Justin Wilcox, UC Berkeley, been there for a while. They've kind of gone stagnant, but be time for a change. Carl Dorrell of Colorado, really great 2020, really bad 2021. Colorado's a tough place to win. We'll see what happens there. I've already mentioned Herb Edwards. David Shaw out of Stanford. Right? Obviously, Stanford isn't the easiest place to win at or recruit, and he's had a tremendous amount of success. Multiple Rose Bowl wins, I believe. Big names come out of there. Most notably, Luck played his tail end of his career there with him, and then obviously Christian McCaffrey. He hasn't been good in the past 2 to 3 years.
Son on the roster now, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So right. So we'll see if that happens. We'll see what happens there. But I can see Stafford making a change if it's another really poor season. Last one is Chip Kelly out of UCLA. Another hot take. Right. So here's the reason. Chip Kelly. I know you're like, bro, shut up. But here's the reason why. I know that their bowl game got canceled last year, but they haven't won a bowl game since Chip Kelly's been there. Alongside the fact that there's a lot of high expectations coming this year, especially with DTR. He did kind of get screwed with Dylan Gabriel for this commitment from UCLA to Oklahoma, but that's the business of college football. If he has a 500 year, he stays. If he only wins 3 or 4 games, he's gone. That's the way I see it. I also think UCLA is low-key irritated by the whole going back to Oregon thing. So I think Eagles might come into play as well. So if he doesn't have a great year, the AD might say it's time for you to go. When it comes, it's a ruthless business. We all know.
Right, but that tell us you can swallow a big amount of money. Good God, they'd be paying 2 coaches to not coach a lot of money.
Yeah, that is true. And money could play a factor into keeping him. That's why I said if he kind of like hovers on that 500 range, I think he stays. But if he has a really, really bad year, I think that UCLA will move on from him. And quite frankly, in the new era of college football, especially with the new TV deal the Pac-12 should be getting, I think a lot of people are going to start writing checks with cash that they don't necessarily have yet, betting on the cash that they will get in the future, especially since the Pac-12 took away the divisions. So not just the top 2 teams going to be playing, basically setting up Oregon versus USC for the next 10 years, essentially. When it comes to the college football playoffs, I mentioned this in a TikTok I made. If you guys want to check out my TikToks, I make quick sports takes on there, Midnight Sports Today. But I said my 4 teams for the college football playoffs are going to be Alabama, Ohio State, USC, and Baylor in that order. And I know we both mentioned USC, how they're not there yet. I agree with you. However, they're playing in the Pac-12 where if you can score enough points, defense doesn't matter. It's just the way it is. I'm not saying they're going to win the playoffs. I'm saying they have a decent enough schedule. They can put together an 11, 12-win season and a conference championship with Caleb Williams, who impressed a lot of people at Oklahoma. The thing to watch out for USC is that Oklahoma's biggest heel, as we knew, was defense. The defensive coordinator from Oklahoma, Alex Grinch, is at USC. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know if the talent that they got is going to make him a better coordinator. But Oklahoma had a fair amount of talent on defense, and they just were never able to put it together. And then number 4 is the Baylor Bears. Scheduling. I know people are like, Brock, shut up. Where's Georgia? Right? And I'm not saying Georgia's not going to be the playoffs. I think they have a really good chance. However, they did lose a lot of talent to the draft. I could spend all day talking about all the names. But most importantly, to me, 3 to 4 teams in the college football playoffs are going to be there undefeated. If Georgia slips up once, and in my scenario, they will to Alabama, that's just the kicker. And that's why I'm a big fan of the expanded college football playoffs. Those are the teams that I see representing the NCAA in the college football playoffs. And the last thing I want to say before we get off is I'm looking forward to a really great college football season. A lot of big question marks in the air. The big surprise for me, I'm predicting for Coach of the Year candidate, is going to be Billy Napier in Florida. Great success he had at University of Louisiana Lafayette. Can coach up quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson has a ton of talent, just kind of was put in some really bad spots. I think if they can get it going, they could be a team that wins 8 to 9 games in 2022.
I don't hate any of them. I like a lot of those. I think that I'm a little different. I'm two teams different. I think Clemson is back in terms of the college football playoff. I think they find their way back in. I agree with you. It's just back down to one SEC school. And yeah, pretty sure it's going to be Alabama. Ohio State, I agree on. I think Oklahoma State wins the Big 12 and finds their way there. I mean, the Pac-12 could get there, but I think Oregon's still the class of the Pac-12. But we'll see. But I think USC is probably one more year away. But we'll see. It's exciting to see what happens out there now. And you're right. I think they are setting up a sort of USC Oregon thing for the time being. And we'll see if they can execute it, because all the elements are there to allow that to happen.
Yeah. Definitely. The thing with Oregon, which gives me pause, is I don't know the day one quarterback. That's kind of the big issue for me. Especially since there's not even like a plan that we're gonna do these 2 guys and we'll see. You know, it's kind of up in the air right now. And for Oklahoma State, it's probably because I'm a hater. I'm probably being emotional and irrational and all the bad terms, but I don't believe in Mike Gundy at all. He had 4 plays inside the 5-yard line to score a touchdown, and they did it. Like, at that point, you gotta say maybe a national championship is just not in the cards for you. I don't know.
Playoffs.
I would say even a playoff spot, maybe that's just not in the cards for you. For the many great Cowboys teams you've had, you only have 1 Big 12 championship. I don't care how many above average bowl games you win against pretty good competition. It's been a long time, and it just hasn't happened.
I think Oklahoma takes a bit of a step back, temporary, but a little bit of step back. Then opens the door a little bit, and obviously Baylor's. I agree with you. I think it comes down to either Oklahoma State or Baylor. I think one of those 2 teams comes out of the Big 12, and right now I'm still taking it, sort of wait and see attitude. And what some of the things you said about quarterback play also give me pause when it comes to Baylor as well. I need to see Baylor have consistently good quarterback play also before I'm ready to buy in. Spencer Saunders, I think, is going to have a really good year this year. So I don't have the same sort of strong feeling about the quarterback play I've seen so far at Baylor. So maybe they turn it around. If their quarterback play is, significantly better, I could see them winning it. So I don't hate your picks at all. I just see it slightly different.
Fair enough. Yeah, I just like the system they have more than the players they put on the field. OC came from BYU. Zach Wilson took him to 2nd overall pick. Shapen, There's some decent things from him. I agree. Offense suspect. I'm more just banking on David Randall's defense to be able to close out those close games. So that's the way I see things working out. But most likely I'm wrong because that's usually how it goes whenever we make picks early in the year. A team like LSU in 2019 or Auburn in 2010 will come out of nowhere and just ruin everything we've been saying and studying for the past several months.
Well, tell everyone where they can, social media, where they can find your work and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So on Twitter, that's where I'm the most active on. It's at MNS Today. Once again, that's at MNS Today. You can check out my website. It's going to be midnightsportstoday.org. On that website, it has access to all my articles. Just click on blog. On the front page, there's a place called Your Stories. Click on there. That takes you to my YouTube channel, where I've done a bunch of great interviews, several featuring the main man himself, Bill Carroll. We just released another episode for Midnight Sports Talk, and that is featuring Omar Borja from Beyond the Straits podcast, and also Coach Jeff Rambold, CFL coach and also former coach at University of Hawaii, part of my series about the best players to ever play at the University of Hawaii. That series will culminate in my list of the top 100 greatest Warriors of all time. But I talk about all kinds of different things, all the sports, and I just like to have a great dialogue with you guys. So if you guys ever want to talk, hit me up on Twitter and just have a great conversation.
Well, I look forward to where like guys like that in the
Yeah, no, definitely. Me and you, when I first hit you up, it was because of Grambling hiring Art Briles as offensive coordinator for a day. And unfortunately, that relationship has just been great. And obviously, I'm a big fan of what you put on every year, the Makapalooza. Great fun. Want to shout out everyone that participated in that, even the haters that are mad that I won. Rightfully so, but y'all didn't see the trades I was making behind the scenes. So, but we'll leave it at that. Also, want to shout out real quick Cowboy Greg, because, that guy, when you talk about a great drafter, that's somebody y'all got to watch out for.
I 100% agree. And hey, the old saying, you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. They'll have a chance at you again next year.
They're going to be coming hard, especially with their verbal smack talk.
Yes, indeed. Thank you once again, Brock Viera of Midnight Sports Today. And always a thrill. If you aren't following Midnight Sports Today, which is MNST?
MNS Today.
MNS Today. There it is. On Twitter, please do that. Get your life right. And I'm not a big TikTok person, but it sounds like he might be. So if you're a TikTok person, check him out there. Once again, Bill Carroll's NEC2 Sports Media and Nuts and Bolts Sports and Around the Block and Consistent Draft Services. Always a thrill, always a pleasure. And once again, we will be talking again, maybe at least once more before the season begins and definitely further into the season. Probably especially around like maybe some big Mountain West and Pac-12 matchups. I want to get you on maybe on a preview before those.
I look forward to it. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Yes, indeed. And like I said, maybe we'll do a little thing where we tweet while we're watching some of those games and tweet out our thoughts to each other and stuff like that.
Sounds good. Look forward to it.
Okay. Thank you once again. And we'll do this again. Like I said, always a pleasure. Thank you once again for joining us and have a wonderful rest of your day, Brock.
You too.